T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Launch Sequence Podcast. We're back after probably about 30 minutes of troubleshooting to get this show going. That means it's going to be a good one, so sit back and get comfy. I am joined today by the Astropub, Mr. AstroHistorian, Lord Stradamus, the man himself, telling us the history of the space fascists of Hurston and the lovely, lovely individuals over at R-Corp. And we're going to be talking today about Star Citizen 4.3. It's going to Evocati this weekend, and it's got some interesting additions with the underground facilities, new mission givers and stuff like that. But we're also going to hit up on how has the year been going narratively for this game and feature-wise, and what comes up later in this game. As always, we talk about space games here, one particularly, of course, but we're always open to some other choices, right?
Yeah. I always like well, I was gonna say, I said this before, and we're gonna go into a little bit here, which is, if those of you listening to the podcast, go subscribe to Space Tomatoes YouTube, because if you're used to me coming on and talk about other space games with Space Tomato, it's I usually am here when we talk about other space games. He started a brand new weekly show called Space Games Weekly, which you should go check out as well, because we're getting sort of this new weird and wonderful renaissance of space games with new ideas and stuff coming out. A new Expanse game, the former BioWare devs doing their own new BioWare thing with I think with there's a famous person who's attached. Why am I blanking on his name? Because I think he's from Austin. He's famously the famous Texan.
Talking about the author who wrote the book?
No, he was in the like trailer. I want to say.
Oh, like the actor?
Yeah, McConaughey.
Oh yes, that's right, Matthew. Yeah, he came in for the trailer.
Yeah.
Space with his voice. His voice. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
His unique voice with Exodus. So. Yeah, so like, and then you got things like a jump ship, you've got a void ship. There's so many like new space and science fiction games that are coming out. And of course, we also have the good news, like Cyberpunk 2 has been greenlit and is starting to work. They're actually hiring writers right now, which, you know, if I actually had experience in writing, because everyone knows that I do lore and stuff like that, but if I actually had like something published somewhere that I could point to, I would have applied for that position, even if I wouldn't get it, and been like, yeah, sure, I'll write for Cyberpunk, a universe that I love and have loved since I was a teenager. Dude, literally growing up in the same city as the guy who wrote it, you know?
I really hope that whatever they do for the next game in Cyberpunk, they make the story a little more about like being in Cyberpunk than having like a hero narrative kind of thing, you know? Because
I mean, there was
such an interesting
good elements
world
there.
Yeah.
Have you played it since the new updates and stuff like that?
I'm still working my way through the DLC, so I'm doing like my big 100% playthrough after that came out, and I'm nowhere near getting all the way through it, but I am enjoying it for what it is, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of like story building. I think they added a lot of more after the critique of like this isn't very Cyberpunk. They added a lot more of that sort of flavor.
Yeah, the DLC is really, I love the DLC more than the base game. I hope that the next one has more of the kind of make choices and change the way the story works that they kind of hinted at when they were first previewing it.
I mean, and generally speaking, I think just going back to space games, and we'll tie this back into Star Citizen in terms of its narrative, is that we are seeing a lot more interesting narratives being created in the science fiction and like specifically space realm for video games. So CIG is going to have and has a lot of competition now to actually tell stories, especially in the unique situation that CIG is in terms of its sandbox game status, as we talked about, which is like Cyberpunk. It's hard to tell stories in a sandbox game because you never can. I've actually said this in a AstroHistorian video where you've got a situation where typically in a video game you have the advantage of having a linear narrative, so you can take advantage of a lot of different specific techniques that work with movies and television in terms of things like reveals, lighting. You can control a lot of things. But when it comes to sandbox games, when you have this open world nature, you can't control what way and how players will approach a problem. You can't deal with like the time of day. You can't deal with like there's a lot of different elements that you can't control. So you have to do different ways of telling the story. And so CIG has both succeeded and epically failed in this process this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach this going forward, especially given the atmosphere, the growing sphere of influence that space games are starting to have in the popular narrative, especially in gaming, with CIG's own storytelling. So
I hope that space games someday become as ubiquitous as fantasy games. I know it won't happen, but maybe we can get a little bit there, like halfway there. It's nice to be able to just pick your genre and be able to find the game that you're looking for that fits that genre. But bringing it back to Star Citizen, why don't we start with the story? I think this will lead us into what's going on with 4.3, specifically underground facilities, ASD, new mission giver, and that kind of stuff. How do you feel about the story so far in this game this year? A lot of the conversation has been around features not really being added. Is the content too PvP focused? Are they doing too much FOMO ship sales and stuff like that? But I'd like to approach this more from the story side, from the folks who are enjoying the things that they're going through and getting to see more mission givers, more dialogue, and more actual reason behind the things they're doing. How do you think CIG's been doing on delivering that this year?
In terms of dialogue, and well, they've had some really good advantages. Number one, the two big things they've done this year, which are big, massive, and things have been begging for them to do for years, is NPCs now idly chatter, and they've increased the idle chatter significantly and also decreased it. It used to be like they were talking over each other. They talk so much. Now they've reduced it a little bit, but they've diversified the lines. They've changed things up. I've seen players actively come to my Discord or talk. It's like, hey, I heard this. You're the lore guy, right? I've heard them talk about this weird thing with Terra, or they've talked about this like ASD, about this ASD thing, or they've talked about other random things. Like there's one that was talking about the Devaran senator, Suchkosi, and it's like,
nice.
Oh shit. So like, and then that's what those sorts of random dialogues are good for in narratives, especially for like we talked about sandbox games, is that it encourages you to look into these situations, to find more information about it. If you just are waiting for your ship to spawn and you hear someone start talking, you might stop there and listen for them for a moment. And if you hear them say like, oh yeah, have you heard about the new Devaran senator, Suchkosi? And stuff like, oh no, tell me more. And then they continue to talk about it. And you as the player go, what's a Devaran? Who's Suchkosi? And so you desperately look through the game to find that information. Right now, you can't have that information.
Yeah, now
but
you're
you can
lost.
go online and find it.
Yeah.
But it encourages you. And like now, the next step they have to do is things like the Galactopedia. So someone can go, what is a Devaran?
And how
it pops up.
how
Devaran
great
is a species, and you know.
How great would it be if you hear some idle chatter, and because the game knows that like that audio was caught by you, you get a little notification that says you got an entry put into your Galactopedia. And I guess the way the Galactopedia would work is like you already have all that information rather than you're collecting it like a codex. So that wouldn't really happen in Star Citizen, but I guess that's more of a squadron thing, huh?
I'd love for them to take that same idea though and put it into Star Citizen, and just so that it doesn't say codex updated, it just pops up saying, would you like to know more? You know, because like just saying would you like to know more would A, nostalgia bait people, but B, it would also give you a nice little pop-up saying this, you know. So like even if you didn't hear the conversation because you're focusing on other things that popped up, you might check your MOBA glass anyways to figure that out.
It is
pretty cool.
Very nice that it doesn't. You don't have to go to a wiki for at least a couple things now, and we get more and more into that point where like you don't have to go to the website to find out everything that's going on with Star Citizen.
That would be nice. as much as I am the lore guy who loves the fact that people go onto my videos and stuff like that and watch them, it'd be nice to be able to have the actual online stuff in game. Though it is nice that there is the Galactopedia, which is you can find. But the other thing is mission givers. The fact that they brought back mission givers in the sense that you have video and audio components where you can hear people talking, at least if not see them for specific missions, is important in my opinion because it drives you more connections. Now I'd love for them to go deeper like they used to have with just an initial meetup or something like that, a little bit more social calls from those mission givers so it feels more like they're characters rather than just placeholder NPC to talk about mission, so you can drive a connection with them. But those two things are huge steps for Star Citizen because it allows for more connections with the universe, and that allows for more people to expand their knowledge in terms of what the universe is about, what things are like. One of the things that I've heard with the resource rush, for instance, is a lot of people are like, Hurston are mean. It's like, yeah, like, what did you expect? Have you seen Loreville?
Yeah, it was actually pretty funny. I was on the subreddit, so people were discussing this, and one person responded, and they were like, "Where are you guys getting all this lore about how bad Hurston is?" And I'm like, "Dude, just walk around the city. Like, just look at the things in the city. It's not a great place." But I think they kind of messed up in that they've allowed the resource rush to be driven by skins and colorways and whatever shinies people wanted rather than for the first time ever really bringing in lore to the game and having people make some form of decision based off of that lore. Like it would be cool if every now this is a lot to try and get into an alpha stage game, and I don't blame them for not going super hard on this, but it would have been cool if every planet's reward, like if a certain planet won, then that would change something that had to do with that planet. Like R-Corp winning would mean that components across the whole game got a little bit cheaper. First, and but maybe at the same time that means that also
there's a consequence.
Yeah, there's some kind of consequence, and it feels like right now it's just sort of, oh, there's this reward and it looks like this, so make your decisions, and you kind of lose that lore in it.
I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about how what they want to see happen is is that there's a consequence with Hurston winning, like having fees for docking fees added just to the station around Pyro. Now that Hurston's in control of the station around the Pyro station jump point, just so like there's the consequence, because it's like Hurston now has 5% discount, so they're going to charge 10% docking fees. The cost of 10%, like basically increase the docking fees to be able to offset the loss of revenue from their discount and that kind of stuff, just for because they want to take advantage of Hurston Station of the Pyro Station, because in lore, famously, Hurston treats everything like a devaluing asset, even its own planet. So like they're like, any way to make revenue is a good way of making revenue, as long as it doesn't decrease the quality of our products. We're gonna do it, meaning taking advantage of our workers, taking advantage of a planet.
Okay, but
so
since you are the narrative guy, I gotta know,
Yeah.
because a lot of people have been asking, and I don't always have the answers for them. We know that Hurston's bad, and we know that Crusader doesn't really care about their security, but between the other three, besides Hurston, Microtech, Crusader, and R-Corp, are they also pretty bad corporations? Like, where do they land on the ladder of Messer terrible versus, I don't know, Admiral Bishop, yay, you're so fun to be around, kind of?
I'm going to say this is just going to sound a little controversial, and this may get people mad because it sounds like political stuff, but there's not a corporation in the Star Citizen universe that isn't evil in some way, shape, or form. Every corporation is sort of evil because every corporation is only focused on itself. So as a result, it doesn't really care about they don't really care about anything but their own bottom line, for their own survival.
Look, I'm not
And
going to trust any company that owns a whole planet. That-
I
That's
mean,
already pretty weird.
like there's a running narrative in the Star Citizen universe where every time a company takes over something like as big as a planet or sometimes a system, that company fails and then destroys everything around it. The two great examples of that are Hathor, which we've experienced, and Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, which we've experienced. Both of those are now a narrative of like, hey, it's actually bad when companies control large parts of people's lives because they usually are awful at it and they don't know what to do and they mess up. Even Crusader famously is having problems because while they are well-meaning, they are not competent government. They're not a competent government. And that's not me. Dave Haddock has said that personally. Like they're really well-meaning. They just don't know what they're doing. It's like it's almost like the narrative of Star Citizen is that companies shouldn't be in charge of people's livelihoods and existences because they're bad at it. They don't know how to function with that.
You have this like literal pirate space base floating around one of their moons, and they just and everybody's like, okay, well, why in the world are we as players the ones who are stopping them from coming to Crusader and laying siege to their cities? And it's like, exactly, Crusader's not doing a great job.
No, and they care too much because taking over that station would just be a bloody mess and get a lot of civilians killed. So they don't want that bad reputation. Whereas like Hurston wouldn't care. Hurston would just nuke it and just be like they were a threat. And because they have close connections with the UE government and everyone already hates them, it wouldn't have hit that.
Just imagine Hurston's conscious is like the Anvil ship computer. Kill.
Yeah. That's Aegis, I think. It's like kill.
Yeah.
Whereas Drake is, I just love Drake is congratulations, you've done it. Good job.
Good job. You ended that person's life. So
yeah,
they've been focusing on getting this story more implemented into Star Citizen. And I genuinely, I think, especially with the mission givers you mentioned, this is the kind of stuff that falls under the playability umbrella that is in your face, but it's not really like when almost all of the people who talk about this focus on playability, focus on the stability side of it. Is the game becoming more playable? But I also see this kind of stuff as being, is the game becoming more enjoyable to play? Being able to take a mission and have somebody talk to you definitely takes the game a step up from just reading a bunch of text-based stuff. But it is still mission givers just giving you a call. It's one-way dialogue. It's not really set up. It still feels like it's generic, like everybody else is having the same exact experience. Do you think we're going to get back to the sort of in-person meetups like Miles Eckhart, Recco Battaglia, and Wallace Klim? Or do you think they're actually permanently trying to move away from that model?
I think they're moving away from that model, unfortunately. They've said to themselves that they don't think it's going to work. But I would like for them to keep it in some way, shape, or form, because the problem I have currently with this current system is that it's nice, but it's forgettable. Like for us now who have experienced it, who have not had it and now do have it, I'm sure we all like it. But for people coming in now and in the future, it's standard. It's things you expect from every game of this caliber and size. So in order to increase the narrative, I feel like they need to have more connection. You need to care about the people giving you missions because, that's what you're supposed to do. But in order to like do stories, to make good stories. But I don't think they're doing that because they've said that they're having trouble figuring out how to do that in a way that's dynamic and doesn't slow down the experience because they don't want people to just be doing things. But I think it'd be neat because in the past they actually literally have recorded, which has been leaked many times, all of these mission givers, including Tessa Bannister, where like you had missions which were just not for Tessa, but for like Tessa, you had go to G-Lock and get drunk with her. And then she opens up about her history, her past, what's going on. But you only do that after you've gained enough reputation and trust with her that she does that because she's just like, listen, I can't talk with anybody and I trust you enough for this. Let's go just hang out and drink. And there are missions like that. And like Miles Eckhart, we famously had that mission we saw in the demo, which he would betray you, and depending on how much he trusted you and other things like that, they had a lot of different cool ideas that I think they're trying to streamline now, which I kind of think loses a lot of that narrative point.
Oh yeah.
So definitely still need to have those narratives.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds more like the single player experience to try and plan it out like that, but I definitely want to be meeting with people and actually having conversations. It just feels like if every character is just a person on a video screen, like you said, it's great now. It's a huge step up for the game from the text-based mobiGlas stuff, but over time, I don't know. I look at a game, I think like Destiny does a really good job of this, of building character for the people in the game that are giving you missions to the point where they can have one of those characters die in a trailer and it completely changes the way the community feels about the game. And you don't really get that if they're just some person on a video screen that calls you every couple of times when you drop a contract. And they're like, what the hell? Why did you not deliver that box? No, I want you to come to my doorstep and kick my dog if I did that. We'd get some beef. Don't kick my dog.
No, I agree. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's just I do wonder if players should be expecting the story and narrative side of this game to be continuing to take that step back. Do you think that well, actually, let's pivot towards really what's been going on in the game and look at it from the more of the mission and the ongoing player activity side of things. They've been focusing a lot on what they called the A and the B stories this year. The A story was the kind of incursion into Pyro, which, to be quite honest, has disappeared for the majority of the year at this point. The B story is this regen crisis that started around May and has been slowly progressing through different sandbox activities and events. Both of those storylines, do you think they've been doing a decent job at delivering those and getting people more wrapped up into the narrative, making them care more? Or do you think most people are still ignoring the narrative and just taking part in these events and moving on?
Yes and no. Yeah, like both a little. I do think more people care than they have in the past, but I also think that it's not enough. Like, for instance, ASD, the Second Life Initiative and the Stormbreaker, and now the new section add-on to that, which is the new form of the cooperative zones, new like Onyx facilities, underground facilities. All of these have a nice narrative, and I think I think that in general, sorry, getting something real quick. I think that in general, they could improve on this, but I also know that a lot of it is out of their hands. So, like for instance, the supply or die and the fight for Pyro stuff was, I think, fairly okay, but because of the technical limitations of the game, they weren't able to express the narrative. But then you see like Hathor. Hathor has data pads on different bodies. People began to realize that it was technically okay. There were still some problems with, obviously, implementation didn't work, but you could still go there today and experience those pads and read more about stuff if you wanted to. So they actually spawned. And Stormbreaker had actual voice recordings you could download and listen to. And of course, the game was fairly fun. It's just there are those technical limitations limited the ability for players to enjoy it. So I think the narrative is fine. It's just because of where we are in the game right now, because of their limitations in terms of how to tell the stories, they fail. So it's less of is this narrative's fault or mission design's fault, and more of just the game doesn't work in many cases. The Second Life Initiative resource rush right now is, I think the game design's great. It's fun. It's non-combat related. It's a lot of line go up stuff, and people like seeing line go up. And I think most people would enjoy it if it was not broken.
Yeah.
You know? So that's just the issue. So I think they do succeed in terms of telling the story more and making people care a little bit more. But because things are so broken, it's hard to care.
And
So
they're delivering a lot of the stuff that they've been doing. A big focus has been on this company, ASD, Associated Science Division, or something like that. And
Associated Science Development and Development.
development, yeah. So they first showed up with the ASD locations on Pyro 4 and the Lazarus locations with the irradiated sandworm. That was like a big introduction of this company. It grounded them and showed sort of the extremes that they would go to be at the top of their field. And we're seeing that develop over sort of, it kind of was skipped in the resource drive with 4.2.1, but now with 4.3, they're bringing in these Onyx facilities. And we're going to get to the details of these facilities in a few minutes here, but they are focusing hard on this company with things that, actually, now that I think of it, the things that they focused on with this company, none of them are temporary. The event is, but ASD isn't really focused in the event. So all of the stuff that is focused on this company is stuff that will stick around for the players who might try these sandbox activities 1 year, 2 year, 3 years from now. I guess I don't have a question now because I just realized that they're not going to disappear. I was going to ask you if you think it's a problem that they're trying to do these introductions of companies with things that are temporary, which might confuse players in the future. But all of this stuff is going to persist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to think about things like Stormbreaker was created because of the problems with the generation crisis.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Like, it's a failed facility. That's why it's failed. So it'll always be there because it's always been a failed facility.
They're just perpetually experimenting on sandworms.
Well, no, it's just failed. So there are people who are guarding it, but like it's like those people were there to guard it after the fact. So like, you know, they could even change that in the future to, instead of it being guards, to be like scavengers, like they have with the underground facilities, where these people aren't really there to protect the facility as much as the facility has been taken over by other people. And so it's just like those sandworms were there, those Valakar are there, but they're just fucked up. So
yeah. Well, talking about these 4.3 new locations, the Onyx facilities are underground facilities, and there's a history to underground facilities. They were first concepted in, I think, 2022 to replace the bunkers that we got from the initial push with Hurston in 2018 and all that new content. But then underground facilities kind of turned into distribution centers over the course of a couple of years. And now those distribution centers have kind of been left behind, it seems, to most players. And we're getting underground facilities now in this sort of new format. Can confirm the game is adding about 100 of these underground facilities to the game, all in this single patch. And I think that's testament to just how much more freedom they had to actually do things with stuff after server meshing has come in. But do you think that there is a significance to that number of locations? Do you think they might take some of them and just turn them into something else that's not related to this? Because that's 100 different places all focusing on sort of players doing the same thing there. Sounds like it might get a little old.
I can imagine them diversifying it. Like right now they have one story, but they could come up with a lot of different stories. These like as far as I understand right now, these ASD facilities, the limited amount of time I did play, it was basically like they were looking into Dr. Jarrett, who was the guy from Stormbreaker, but it was looking for an associate of his who was also involved in these facilities. And ASD is one of those companies, like we're saying earlier, companies in Star Citizen are all kind of messed up. So ASD is one of those companies that specifically and particularly has a dubious past. They're most famous for, up until this point, they created a new weapon that was this like new neutron cannon. They demonstrated in the public. So they like brought a bunch of press and investors together to show off this new weapon, and it exploded, killing a lot of them.
It happens. What are you going to do? Sometimes you just accidentally murder a bunch of journalists. It's not a joke.
So
Don't laugh at that.
don't laugh at that. But it so like that's an example of like how like absolutely um absolutely like fucked they are.
Just unrestrained as a company. They're trying to push boundaries when it's not really responsible. Do you think that
and as a result there's probably a lot of like other nefarious stuff they've done in the past, and they can also change the branding from ASD to other things too in the future.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering is your opinion on whether or not you think that these underground facilities for this specific event are in any way related to the ones that they introduced us to before. Do you think that this could lead to them expanding on the underground facilities? Do you think that it might mean that they get added to the bottoms of distribution centers, or is this just another new direction that CIG is deciding to go in with new locations?
Sorry, get that again.
So I'm wondering if you think that these are underground facilities that are in any way related to distribution centers or the production of underground facilities that they told us about before. This would be back in like CitizenCon 2022.
Yeah.
Or if you think this is just like
But they're
yet
different.
another new thing that they're trying to introduce and they're going to start leaving the other stuff behind again.
I think they split it. I think they took the underground facility idea that they started with the distribution center, and they split it into two different ideas. Because they like a lot of stuff, CIG have this big idea, and then they take those ideas and go, well, this doesn't really work as one big thing. Let's split up into different things. So, ironically, I think these underground facilities were probably concepted as the abandoned distribution centers that they talked about when they started talking about the original distribution centers. I think these are the abandoned distribution centers that they turned into abandoned like underground facilities. So I don't know. They might take this and clean it up a little bit, because these might just be UGFs that were that are that are added. They added a called it the little layer that they do. Like they have these like different stuff they can put into it.
So do you?
I can't remember. So yeah.
They are smaller. Do you think? I mean, you've been to them already. I visited it briefly before falling to my death. Do you think that there are still different scales of this that they might want to do, or just these 100 locations they've added are like, okay, we've made this location, let's move on?
I do think that they're probably just gonna do it and move on. Like they may expand them, but this is the problem with CIG, is that they tend to move from like thing to thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've made this and they're gonna move on from it. I don't know if they'll expand into it.
What do you think of them so far from what I mean, describe your time inside of them.
I like them, honestly. They are trying to think of this in a way that kind of makes sense. That I'm because like when this has been recorded, not many people have seen it, and hopefully more people have it. But I like them in terms of how they're designed, because they have a reflection of Squadron 42's development in it. They're very much hey, here's the objective. Good luck. And you just sort of explore the facility as it is. It's not very big, and it's sort of like a linear facility, but there are elements you can pull it around to it. So
yeah, it feels like there's a little bit of exploration. They worked in this idea of like you get a mission when you physically enter a certain location, which I think will help with them. But I like that they've definitely scattered different aspects of gameplay in there. I've run into the Valakar, as we mentioned, when you were going through it, but there's also like a low-key fabricator in there that doesn't really take your own inputs, but does supposedly make things for you. There's a place where there are spots where you can like repair some things. I don't know if those really do anything more than give you some gameplay, but there is repair opportunities in there. There's radiation dangers in there. There is a new mineable in there, I believe, based on the radiation doing damage to something that already exists. So there's like, it feels like almost a I don't want to say a sandbox. I know that's kind of triggering, but it feels like a conglomerate of a lot of the gameplay stuff they've been coming up with, put into an area with a narrative, with some admittedly very nice music and ambiance, and with some supposed puzzles and dangers in there. Let's talk about the dangers. So, one of the things that is hanging over the release of these locations is the fact that they were originally partnered with cooperation zones, which are no
zones,
which are no longer in the update. Now they are just a place for you to get a mission that takes you there, and then you do the things within there. What a lot of people were hoping for with these cooperation zones was that this was a location that basically was saying, no PvP is going to happen here. You now have the sandbox activity or whatever you would like to format it as, that is strictly for players to go and have no, like, not stressful gameplay, not gameplay where you think somebody's going to sneak up behind you, shoot you, and steal your stuff. But there are still NPCs down there. Do you think that a lot of people will look at a location that maybe doesn't have players attacking you as much, but still has the danger of NPCs and be frustrated with the fact that there is any combat involved at all?
Yes, I do think there will be some of that. However, I think it's a little less than the nature of those facilities isn't nearly as frustrating, I guess you could say. I do think that there are plenty of people who think that when they say PvP versus PvE, they think in terms of like PvP is combat and PvE is non-combat. But there's also an element of investigation in this, and so many people have been waiting for investigation missions to come back that I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad. There are definitely elements of it where like you're facing combat, but it's um I want to say this in the right way because I don't want to say it in a way that's going to trigger people, but I'm going to say I'll just say it. It's exploration. Is what it is.
That is going to trigger people, dude.
That's going to trigger people because it's when I say exploration, there's going to be somebody in the comments being like, "I didn't sign up for this exploration." It's like that's not what I meant, guys. It's exploration in the sense that, like I said, you're giving a mission, you go to a location, and you go explore that area to finish that mission. But a lot of it is just here's an area, go. There's no right way or wrong way to achieve it. There is a right way to achieve the goal, but you can just explore it, walk around, figure things out. There are little nooks and crannies you can go to, and CIG is smart enough that they've added rewards like little loot boxes, which is filled with like gems or other things that you can find if you go to those little side processes. It feels like CIG has learned from their experience making Squadron 42 in terms of how to encourage players to explore the levels that they build, which is always a challenge in any video game because it's the old waterfall rule. Whenever you see a waterfall, there should be behind that waterfall, there should be a chest with gear or something like that to explore, to encourage players to explore every location. And I don't think the CIG has done a masterful job of it here. I just sort of got lost and ended up finding a little nook, which was the dead end. But as I'm finding a little nook at the dead end, it had a loot box with a bunch of stuff in it. And I was like, neat. So I even forgot the whole point of the question. But PvE versus PvP. But like it is, there's a lot of elements of exploration where you're not just constantly fighting people. It's like go to this area, look around, and then you might have to shoot some people. It seems almost like it's contested zones inspired, but it's not really contested zones in that like it feels like you're like constantly on the lookout for violence. It's more of you're there exploring and you'll stumble upon other NPCs who also happen to be there exploring and they want to shoot you. It's a different vibe, and the music is really good.
It sounds a lot like how they sold abandoned space stations at CitizenCon 2023, I think it was. They basically called them like shared PvE and PvP locations that had some NPCs kind of roaming around at times, but mainly you were going in there because you wanted to progress further, deeper into the structure you were in to find things. And there are some interesting narrative bits in these locations, but I guess what I would expect from this delivery is like it doesn't make sense to have 100 locations that have the same investigation mission with the same anomalies down there and the same data that you can find. It feels like they are introducing 100 locations because they want to make sure that players aren't all going to the same ones.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Well,
Sorry, I'm getting distracted because my wife's trying to talk with me real quick. But can you go over that one more time?
well, I didn't really have a question. I was more just saying like it does seem like these locations are there's enough of them that it will get incredibly repetitive. And I guess the unspoken thing I was saying is they've got to change some of these to have different stuff inside of them at some point. You can't just have 100 different underground facilities around Stanton that all require you to go look up the personnel files of ASD and discover what they were
Yeah.
doing in these. It's like that would be crazy. So this feels kind of just like a template.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the start. I hope, and this is one of those things that I have a problems with because so many times CIG has done a template like the Black Kite mission, or you know, I think the best example of this that actually worked was the revamp of Security Post Korea. They did a revamp of Security Post Korea, and then like 3 different new mission types showed up for Security Post, specifically for Security Post Korea. So it does feel like a template, and I hope they continue with it because it's a lot of underground facilities for one mission, even if it's just one mission. Because there's got to be some reasons to explore. You know, they need to have those facilities. I feel like need to have more of a, you know, one in a certain amount of chance to go to a location and find rare items or crafting materials or ships or whatever. Those facilities feel like they're like made for acquiring resources for Wikelo, because that's the sort
For
of thing that Wikelo.
exploration.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Wikelo should be connected to places like this because it's a place you can consistently go into and you can gather resources and then come back to him because it's a rare place that you're like basically it's a dungeon. You know, it's a abandoned facility where you have riches, you know, from random scientific exploration from years in the past.
And if there's enough of them, even naturally, you're not going to be running into players as much. Like I look at the Hathor locations, for instance. Now, Hathor locations are like my favorite thing to do in the game. I go almost every week and have been for a while. And that's because it's just you don't really know what's going to happen. You get there and they're NPCs. Sometimes they're on the roof, sometimes they're on the ground, sometimes they're in the buildings. You got to work your way through them. You can go in any order you want, get the cards you want. You can access the red rooms if you'd like to. You can align the dish if you want to. You could just get some guns and run away. And this feels like a better version of that, not just because there are 100 of them, but because there's no armistice zone. Like there's no property line. So it's not like the bunkers we have in this game right now where it's hit or miss. If you want to go to a bunker just to like have some fun, you get there and suddenly they're shooting at you. Why are they shooting at you? Because you're not allowed to be there. Okay, well, that's annoying. Now you have these locations that are not in anybody's jurisdiction, so you can freely not even pick up a mission, just happen upon one of these things, drop inside and see what was going on the inside. And they remind me a little bit of the vaults in Horizon Zero Dawn in that way, in that you didn't like those had objectives that you were supposed to go and do, but you could always return to them and go and fight some enemies and find some interesting loot on the inside whenever you wanted to. And I think this game needs more of that, not just in these locations, but in space stations, with derelict ships, with city buildings in ArcCorp. Like, this is, I think, a really important location type that they could do a lot with. And I agree with you. I hope that this is just kind of a first test case for it.
Yeah, I mean it has. I called these cope zones just for reference, because I said this earlier, because I felt like this was too early for them to try to do what they want to do, which is sort of a place where you can go in and clearly instanced, so you can go in with a couple of friends and figure out like the whole thing. But this feels like I can see why these were designed with like instanced dungeon adventures. These feel like they would be very fun to do. And if there's like hundreds of them across a system, that means you can just vary up whatever you loot you get and other things that are part of it. You could add boss battles to it. You could just do a lot of different things with it. You could play around with that idea, and have it instanced would have people constantly want to run them, because it's like, it's just me and my 4 friends and we're going to go have fun. You know, it feels like the backdrop of something that they could do for fun. Mm-hmm. But then my cynical side comes out and goes, CIG has done this before and they've always failed. So what's different now? And the answer is nothing. There's nothing that's different right now. So it's got potential, but a lot of things that CIG does has potential. And even with the narrative aspect of it, you know.
Well, that brings up a great point, that the biggest thing that a lot of people were waiting for in this update were the cooperation zones, and they have been delayed out of the update and therefore out of these facilities, which now just kind of act as sandbox locations. I'm not going to say activities, because it's not like something that, I mean, I guess it kind of works the same and you can work through it the way that you want, but they feel like sandbox locations, and like what we were saying, you could just go in there, find some loot, explore a little bit, and leave. But why do you think these locations were able to be dropped into 4.3 while the cooperation zones that were meant to be inside of them were able to be removed? Do you think there was something significant that, because CIG doesn't usually do that. Like, if they need to delay something and it's related to a location, they seem to usually delay the location along with it. But this time they have continued along with these underground facilities while still keeping these cooperation zones out of them. Why do you think they were able to decouple these two things?
Year of playability, year of content.
As in,
they basically shifted.
Wanted it to be able to be playable.
They needed it in. Like they had nothing else to do. They couldn't put in another thing in there, so they just removed the idea of cooperative zones and said, we'll get back to it when we have the technology to fix it. For now, it's just another sandbox activity.
So what do you think that technology is? Like, what would they need to do to make the underground facility that you experienced today into a cooperation zone?
Instancing.
You think that was it?
That's it.
You think that's what slipped? They were going to instance these locations?
Yeah, I think they were originally planning on instancing, because you got to remember, like, they didn't just like yesterday put these in underground facilities together and put the mission together. It took them months to make this. So the planning for this started at least 9 months, if not a year ago. And what was on 9 months ago, which would have been December, what was the big sort of technological push? What did we see CIG talking about? They talked about, I mean, they had just finished their instancing for hangars, and they were talking about wanting to do that for the gameplay. Were finishing up the server meshing technology, and they were just starting to put that out there into the world. And they were working on engineering, the crafting, base building, monsters. There were so many things that they were working on that it was clear that if they had pushed this year like they had done the previous years, where they just pushed out technology when they wanted to go, and delayed releases until they had the technology out, this would have been probably delayed, honestly, but it would have also still ended up being part of that initiative, part of that instancing and that kind of stuff. So I think what happened was just they were planning this, and then when they got down to it, and they're like, okay, well, now we want to do as much as we can in terms of every month have a new content or new feature. And so they just took what they had already and they adapted it to the realities of what it is. That's gaming 101 almost. Like, that's how every game is developed. They have a lot of ideas, and then some things don't work, and so they just mold what they have with what they have already into the realities of the game, and then try to make it work. And that's basically what CIG's done.
So you're telling me that they were finally about to drop a new feature in a big way into the game, and they had to delay it?
Yes. Well, no, I think they came up to it and they said, could this work without instancing? And the team that is behind this said, no, we couldn't do cooperative zones without instancing. And they didn't have the technology ready. They are working on it. But it's tied to dynamic server meshing, and dynamic server meshing isn't ready yet. So they just made the hard call. They just said, we'll just do it. We're not going to call this cooperative zones, and we're not going to do the stuff we want to do with cooperative zones. We still have this sandbox activity / story mission that we want to do. We have ready to go. So let's just do that.
Do you think this could be? Do you think dynamic? This is a little bit of a tangent. Do you think dynamic server meshing is that close?
Yes.
Why won't
Based
they
off
tell
of.
us?
Well,
I guess that's
you
why
and I have been working.
Benoit might be coming on to Star Citizen Live soon.
He's coming on to Star Citizen Live in this, and he'll probably do an update on that. Because they've been talking about it the last 2 months in the monthly report. They just sort of mentioned, we're working on it, it's doing it, but it's going to take time. I think it's just stabilizing static server meshing took them longer than they thought. Took them 4 or 5 months to stabilize after they got released.
It's really only just, I think, starting to be unnoticeable.
Yeah.
Which is
like
great.
How many times?
Good for them. Good job.
How many times you've had a 30K that like actually crashed a server?
I've had more crashes to desktop than server crashes.
Yeah, so it's the server, and that's not dynamic server mesh. That's not server meshing's fault because it's individual. It's like people crash to desktop because of the patches, but it's something in the patch, not the back end.
Yeah,
or not the server meshing. So yeah, I think it's closer than people think. I don't think it's coming this year, but I think it's because Benoit has said multiple times that the team was very eager to move on to dynamic, but they knew they had to do static first. And I think dynamic is probably closer than people think, probably by the end of this year, early next year, because they had to delay it because they needed to stabilize static server meshing. So I think, because in all honesty, as I always say this, what is the difference between dynamic meshing and static meshing? It's just how the servers are allocated. That's it. It's just where are the servers located. Right now, they have to manually set where the boundaries for the servers, but dynamic meshing just automatically changes those boundaries. It doesn't change how many servers there are. It just changes where the boundaries of those servers are based off of specific factors. It's a piece of software designed to modify the game in a way that makes it function.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That makes it easier for people. So that way, if they do dynamic meshing, right now they have 10 servers per shard. They can keep 10 servers per shard, but then they can allocate those servers more effectively so that they can deal with high population areas on the fly. And Dynamic One is just taking the boundary boxes they already have and then just allocating them based off of the volume. That's it. So
that's a funny point you make. I made a video recently about the way I think that they could scale up planets at this point because of two distinct things. First is their ability to quantum boosting, allowing us to travel more easily around the game. Second being Starchitect, allowing them to create more points of interest. And like the number one, so actually the first week of this video being out, it had a thumbnail on it that was just kind of like basic expand planets. But then I updated the thumbnail a couple days ago, and specifically now it says something like thousands of locations. So of course that's all the comments are focusing on now. And the top comment that seems to be coming up based on that is that the servers can't handle this many locations. Besides the fact that they're dropping 100 locations in now and not having a problem due to server meshing, it doesn't seem to be clicking that like the idea of server meshing is that they can allocate more and more resources to these planets to do that kind of stuff, so that dynamic server meshing might be able to handle thousands of locations around the game.
I just, such a weird idea that they say, look, we can't handle all these locations. It's like, it's not that they can't handle the locations. They just can't handle the player volume at those locations is the problem. And performance-wise, I've actually not seen much of an issue. Like, generally speaking, the performance has been better than it was last year in almost every situation. Both like PC performance in terms of like hardware optimizations, but also in terms of like NPCs. They're a lot more reactive, and there are some bugs and problems that deal with the back end, but I don't think those have to do with like server frame drops. It's mostly just issues we've known that have happened, like freight elevators that have been a problem for a year. that they just hadn't looked at until recently.
Yeah. Freight elevators.
So, yeah, and it's ship elevators too. Those are the two things that are like the biggest things. I think if they dealt with freight elevators and ship elevators, that's a side point, they would have a much better situation. But that's just a weird idea. Like, no, like locations
just
aren't
put more
problem.
servers.
Yeah, they just put more servers. The reason why they don't do that right now is because it's expensive. Because for 10 servers, they can get 600 people, 600 to 700 people. And that means that they have a lower server to player count than they had before server meshing. Because before it was 100 to 150 per server. So it costs them a lot more money now to run a server than it did in 2024. So dynamic meshing allows for them to keep the same number of servers and dynamically change it to improve performance while also like, you know, without losing performance and or possibly even improving performance in certain areas while increasing the player cap. Because if you can have an area that's locked down, say like one specific underground facility, and you can have 400 people in that facility without a server problem, because the game goes, there's a lot of people in this specific location. Let's boundary box that and give it its own server. That means that one of those 10 servers is focused on that location, but the other servers can be spread out and still, because that 400 out of 1,000 is, you know, what, 40% of the entire server? Yeah. So that's a lot of people to get their own server, but it makes sense. And then you still have 9 servers for everybody else. And that's also, I think, one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of the limitations when it comes to their storytelling and in terms of like the gameplay stuff, simply because they have to work with the load they have right now, rather than for like Nyx, for instance. I don't think they'd want to release Nyx until they can get that player to server ratio more equal, or more players than servers. You know, like I'll go CIG, they're ambitious, so you know, 10,000 people per server or per shard, so that, and with like 10 to 20 servers in a shard would mean that they can much more afford servers because they don't have to have as many. So
yeah,
hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I that's an interesting problem that people are bringing up, but I don't think it is what would hold them back from having all of these locations. So going back to these cooperation zones and the underground facilities that are coming in without them, sounds like you think that cooperation zones being hooked to instance technology, which might be hooked to dynamic server meshing, might be taking longer. Like, I guess here's a big question that I think people will have. Why would they have made the call so recently if it's something that was dependent on potentially dynamic server meshing, in your opinion?
Because I'm pretty sure that CIG doesn't really... I like to say that CIG is ambitious, but there are people like to say CIG is ambitious. I like to say that they have swagger, and swagger isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it's overconfidence, and that's the problem when it comes to their overconfidence. Is they often will come up to the brink of releasing it and go, "Can we still do this?" And then CIG going, "No," but often that discussion doesn't happen until they have the reason to have that discussion, because they always live in hope with whatever technology they have that maybe we can get instancing out, maybe there's something that can be done. But like, you and I have both done this, and I know the community has done this before, where CIG will continue to say, we can do this, and we're like 2 months out from it, and we're all like, no, you can't. There's no way you have the time to get this done. And CIG still says they're doing it until like a week before, and they go, can't do it. It's like, we said you couldn't do it two months ago. Why do we know more than you? And the answer is, we don't. It's just they don't do the hard overview until they have to, because they're so worried about their own stuff and they have hopes. You know, we've seen this before where CIG also sometimes surprises us, where they go, oh, it's ready. It's like rain. Like, we didn't expect rain to show up this year, and it just happened to show up. So,
to be honest, I completely forgot about this statement in the June monthly report. I'll read it again here. I just pulled it up. Steady progress is currently being made toward dynamic server meshing, which is also crucial for the successful implementation of
Of
instancing.
instancing.
I actually had forgotten that and thought that instancing could come without dynamic server meshing. I guess they're not explicitly saying it can't here, but if that is the case, and I think that this is, and if cooperation zones were based around instancing, then I think they they should have made this call a lot earlier and just dropped the locations like they did. I don't think. I think people are still really going to enjoy these locations.
I do. I think people are going to enjoy the, and I like I've said, I say the name cope zones not because I want to deride CIG or think that these are bad ideas, but it just CIG's coping if they think players won't shoot each other in these locations.
That's fair, yeah. And that
Uh,
really, I mean, it's only exacerbated by the fact that reputation doesn't freaking do anything really. We need consequence in this game. Like badly. We need some real consequence. And I know it's alpha, so it's testing and they can't hamper the experience too much so people can't do things that they want to, but it's really starting to hurt, I think, the confidence people have in the idea that this is going to be a game that's peaceful. You know, people are starting to look at this and be like, "Oh, they've they've hired all the people from Call of Duty, and now they're insulting salvagers by saying that they're lazy, and all of the developers hate anything but combat." And you can see this from their additions, and it's like anybody who's been around here long enough knows that the spirit of this game is built around allowing people to choose what they want to do, and we know at some point this game is going to have consequences and things in place to at the very least try to separate these gameplay styles. But I think it is really hurting that short-term confidence people have in whether or not this is even the game for them. And not only is CIG not really putting these consequences in right now in the moment, but they're also not really talking actively about the fact that there will be consequences or that there are features that are in the pipeline that will help with that kind of stuff. Do you think that they're missing something serious here, or is it over worrying?
You think CIG is missing something serious, or the community?
CIG.
I think it's over worry. There is how to put this. There is trying to do it in a way that doesn't insult somebody. I always end up doing this, but there is a phenomena that I have seen in gaming. It's not just Star Citizen, happens in gaming a lot, which is if you're online talking about something, you're not playing it. So the more people who are playing, the less conversations you're going to have around the game. And most of that is going to be little things when people are at work and stuff like that. The things that when they're not playing the game. So the people you have who are often talking or like freaking out about a lot of this stuff about like, oh, CIGs, it's all combat, it's that kind of stuff, I think are being hyperbolic and also are more frustrated at the state of the game than it is frustrated at CIG's directions. We just have the resource rush. Resource rush, if it was working, has no combat. It has optional combat in it, but like most of it is just hauling or mining. Like those are the most effective uses of your time, and they're the best way of getting the most money. And it's really focused on that. And even CIG said we added some combat stuff because we wanted to have people to give the option for people who wanted to have combat. But
honestly,
it
I
was an
like
option,
that.
not the
Like,
focus.
if you don't have a ship that can cargo haul, you can still go and shoot some people down and still get some points. That's a nice touch. Because sometimes I just don't want a cargo haul. But
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I think they focus on it. Do you believe that combat is not actually going to be everywhere in the game all the time in the future?
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be options, especially around certain places in the verse that aren't specifically combat related. It's just combat is always going to be part of this game. It's not the main focus of the game, but the way that CIG has sort of built this game, they described this game, is it's the Wild West in space. And while the Wild West isn't always take your guns out and shoot the bad guy, everyone has guns in the Wild West. You know, there's always a chance something bad will happen.
Even the freaking medical ships have guns on them.
Yeah, like, but I mean, that's sort of the sort of the vibe they were going for originally, was this idea that it's the wild frontier. It's the classic space frontier metaphor where everyone is out trying to make it. So they have guns for protection against wildlife, but CIG also it has already started this and wants to continue to move towards the environment itself, trying to kill
All right. You gotta specify what you mean by wildlife. Are you going by Hurston's definition? Because that includes their own workers at that point.
That includes their own workers, yeah. I mean, yeah, all the definitions, but like, let's think about this. Star City or Stanton is the company town. You know, the classic company town where like the big fat cats with their like monocles and their top hats and their suits and, you know, walking around and be like, well, let me see here, sonny boy, you're working for my company now.
Sounds like concierge members.
You know, and you're sort of like picking up the scraps, but there's a little bit of like cyberpunk in there. But a lot of this stuff is still very Wild West, very frontier coded. And the pyro is just straight up the frontier. It's just wild as all get out. Nyx is a little bit different. It's sort of like, for my friends who like Young Guns and other stuff like that, it's like that sort of thing. The Johnson County War and the Hatfields and McCoys. It's sort of like this. Yeah, on the veneer, there's peace, but underneath, there's like 5 people showing up at this dude's house and shooting him to death. Like, it's not like people are having gunfights in the streets, but like, there are posses that roam around and decide to take care of business, you know?
So do you think that when we come across a system like Castor or Terra, because Stanton is certainly a little more dangerous than those systems, do you think that they're going to have protected areas where people can basically be guaranteed there's not going to be a lot of danger? And that includes both from players who are dangerous, but also NPC pirates and scavengers that might attack you. Do you think that basically you'll be able to go in Terra and play the PvE or the, I don't want to say like private server kind of gameplay, but just a place where people can rest assured that they'll be able to mine or cargo haul in like 99.9% peace whenever they log in?
Yeah, especially Terra and Castor, like because Castra, not Castor, because 100%. I think that's the kind of point of those locations. They're supposed to be where you can just do whatever you want and not have any to deal with the problems. But they're going to be like lower rewards. They're going to be less stressful, that sort of thing. But yeah, 100%. I think they're still planning on doing that. It's just they want to still give the players who want that sort of mixed experience or more volatile experience their play space. One of the biggest problems we've had for the longest time is a lot of people complain like, oh, well, combat, you know, PvP and so on and so forth. Pirate players don't have anything to do. And they've never had anything to do other than attack other players. Like, there's going to be NPC piracy in this game eventually, where you can like take on NPC pirates or take on NPC crew that aren't pirates, that are just like cargo haulers and steal their stuff and run away. And that's going to be the majority of piracy in the game in the future. But for now, if you want to do piracy, if you want to have Star Citizen Black Flag, it doesn't exist except for attacking other players, which pisses off other players.
Yeah. That's a big one. It's like you need to be able to have NPCs to prey on too.
And Outlaws in general just don't have much of a gameplay. I'm a smuggler. That's my main gameplay loop. And I like high risk, you know, have to like keep my signature down, get stealthy, you know, get around checkpoints, go to places and make dangerous deals and stuff like that. But those locations don't exist. Like those gameplay things don't exist yet. So while, yes, I understand that people, including myself, who don't necessarily want to engage in combat all the time are frustrated, it's just the nature of the development right now that it's just not the focus. They just need to get other things out there, and they want to like to go to that mixed crowd more. think they do that at a detriment sometimes because the PvP community, according to CIG's own metrics, is like 4 to 3% of the population. And people have always asked me when I say that, it's like, where's your source? CIG themselves. There was a famous Twitter post where I forgot his name, but he's the guy who works on a lot of the gun balancing. There's a lot of the balancing. Zach Priest. Yeah, Zach. Zach reposted a poll that was done on Twitter by somebody else, which said, what kind of gameplay do you like participate in, PvP or PvE? And the PvP crowd had like 8% of the vote. Most of the people didn't want to do PvP. And Zach reposted and said, this is actually higher than the actual numbers we have internally. Basically saying that the 8% was too high compared to what they know internally and people who participate. So they know themselves that PvP is like a tiny minority of the community. And yet they continue to build PvP-centric stuff because a lot of them are PvPers, so they like that. It's like, yeah, but then you got to build a PvP game.
Yeah, because they hired all the COD devs, remember?
Oh yeah, 100%. Did they actually? I don't even remember.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that's just a way of being like they hired people who like combat.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like that's the thing is I'm not a quote unquote a self-described PvP player, but I definitely want it in the game. I definitely want the ability. I mean, that besides just shooting people, that also means you can salvage other ships. You can cargo haul, you can tractor beam people's hulls out of the way. Like there are a lot of things that I think need to be functional, or rather have functionality that depends on the ability to affect other players. But like you said, the features surrounding that aren't the priority right now. I think they're missing in not making that the priority. Squadron 42 is the priority, clearly. But it seems very, very hard to universally send that message that like these things are not the priority, but they are still part of the game's design.
They're fundamental.
Let's shift over to another part of 4.3 here. This is something that's going on throughout the year, really. It is a focus on the mission giver Wikelo, who is the center of collection missions in the game and has become a bit of a hurdle for players to get ships in game. We're now seeing ships like the Golem, which is a starting ship, probably one of the best additions in a while to get something like the mining-focused career into the hands of players who are new to the game. But they're also now gating that behind earning things with Wikelo. And in my mind, if you're going to go through the work to earn a Golem through Wikelo, then you're going to be playing the game enough and be around enough that by the time you can earn that, you would probably just be able to rent or buy a prospector too. So it almost feels like they're hurting themselves in the way that they're gating these ships, and it's pissing a lot of people off because now you can't earn credits to buy the game and ships or buy the ships in game. Does this come off as something to you that is more permanent? Testing? Do you think it's a little tone deaf? Do you think they should be switching this up right now?
I think they're experimenting, and I think they should be switching it up. The problem is that often Wikelo requires such high requirements with so many I haven't seen the details, but CIG has consistently done this where like you want to get this ship, you want to get an Icti, for instance, you have to get the entirety of a single run, if not multiple runs, of a Stormbreaker mission to be able to get an Icti. And it's like it takes minimum 4 people to do this. So you're going to have to do it at least a dozen times. And if CIG goes, well, yeah, that's the point. It's like, I don't want to do Stormbreaker a dozen times because it's broken.
Yeah.
On top of that, I'm just going to get griefed most of the time trying to do it. So like, if it was an instanced dungeon-like mission, yeah, I'd do it a dozen times because I feel like it would be a little bit more forgiving. Even if it was broken, I could still like figure out a way of making it work. But it's the bugs, the performance issues that can sometimes happen with that mission, and the PvP aspects of that mission mean that like you can take hours of your time to get something done, and what you get out of it is something nice, but it's not worth that amount of time and effort
Not game
in terms of
changing.
actual stuff.
Yeah.
And the golem is a starter miner.
Can't even change the laser on it.
It's worse than the prospector. It's nice as a starter ship, but to block it behind, like, what are you going to do? You're going to give it a different laser head specifically? Like, that doesn't make any sense either, because you could just, the time and effort you could do to that, you can just go buy a prospector in game and get it better. So I feel like CIG just doesn't understand these things, and they're experimenting, and hopefully they can change that up in the future and fix those issues. But
yeah, I feel like they're messing up there. I think it makes sense to lock things behind Wikelo, but there should be, well, it makes sense to lock things behind Wikelo if there are multiple ways to get the ingredients that you need for that. Like, okay, cool, you had Karenite in the cave for the Hathor facilities. It was in there for a quarter. You got your testing done on Hathor. Now let's start making sure that people can maybe go to a specific moon on Pyro and mine Karenite, because then you start getting more Karenite in the flow of the economy. Now you can start having players who are trading Karenite that they went and got and didn't feel like they spent 24 hours trying to get. But they're not doing that. And in a year that is all about playability, which, as I said earlier in this podcast, is not just stability, it's not just fixing bugs, it's not just getting the FPS up, it's about making it feel like a game people are playing. That's like what they want to do this year. They clearly want people to just keep playing the game. And it seems like this is actively hurting that drive.
Yeah. I think CIG is, a lot of this is CIG's been experimenting. Like this year, because they couldn't push out new technology, they've been experimenting on what they can and can't do, how to tell stories, how to do all these little things. But yeah, I think as a result, they're making mistakes. And those mistakes are specifically hurting engagement. And, you know, no matter what CIGs do, they're going to have some problems. But it would be one thing if it was problems. It's another thing that CIG doesn't learn their lessons.
Yeah, it's weird.
Do you remember when Wikelo, they removed the script from Wikelo specifically, and everyone was like, you just added script to the game, and now you're going to make it useless? This is awful. You're doing awful things. And they were just like, oh, my bad, and they added it back. It's like, and now you're doing this? You haven't learned a thing. You haven't learned a thing from these mistakes. Stop doing this. They have learned, I would say, I'll take it back. They've learned a little bit, because then people complain about the gotcha elements of the game, and so that they reversed it back and said it's no longer gotcha stuff. But now, like, this ship that literally should be available to starter miners, people should be able to purchase this in game at New Deal, like now. They've said, it's locked behind this Wikelo thing. It's like, why? No one's gonna do that.
I get that they're experimenting with gameplay decisions, but these all feel kind of like more administrative choices. Like this, the script, like you said, removing that, the components going into the store, these all feel like kind of administrative choices that are being made by people who have just not been connected to this game. Who, like, I can't imagine somebody who's been here for even 5 years, who's seen the way that components have been talked about, or that ship customization has been mentioned, or crafting has been mentioned, thinks that putting components onto the ship's the storefront would make sense. I can't imagine somebody who knows how ship progression and mining and the choices of ships we have, like the Prospector and things like that, would say, yeah, the Golem should be locked behind Wikelo, who requires you to go in to do some random stuff that isn't just making money. Like, you could run one cargo mission in the game and make enough money to rent a Prospector. Why in the world would I go and try and earn a Golem from Wikelo then? Who's making these calls, man?
I think I don't know. I do think it's an administration thing, but I also think it's just, I don't think it's corporate suit type decisions. I think it's well-meaning but stupid ideas made by higher management.
I don't know.
You know.
Let's wrap this up with a little talk about the rest of the year. We have been waiting for the engineering EPTU for 8 months now, and we haven't seen a single EPTU this year, despite it now being the second year in a row that they said it was going to be a crucial part of their testing programs. And there are other things that I think they're kind of sitting in the clouds over people's heads. You know, crafting, base building, quantum boosting, hacking gameplay, FPS scanning and radar, like little things that we're kind of hoping would be sprinkled throughout the year and haven't shown up. What do you think the rest of the year is going to look like in terms of the feature development and also in terms of the updates we'll be getting? Will we be seeing a 4.4, 4.5, or like what's your prediction? Come on, put yourself in the hot seat.
I know I already put myself in the hot seat in the past, and I do this to you. Just remember that you did this to me now.
Yeah, yeah.
Next time you're on the captain's table, I'm doing it to you.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going back on there. This is it. I'm signing off.
This is it. He's done. I think CIG slipped into bad habits. They've always done this in the bad habits, where they have an idea, they want to do it, and they find some problems, and then they pull back because they're not quite ready yet. They get swagger. Yeah. They get overly ambitious in terms of what they do. With the realization that 4.3 is not going to have any sort of new features, and that CIG has seemed like they've been wanting to, because they actually said they were going to do an engineering preview build in June, and then they said, oh no, and then in like late June they said we're going to wait about a month, and everyone joked, myself included, so we'll see you in August, and it's August and they still haven't done it yet. But I have a feeling that's why 4.3 is being pushed so hard, is because they want to do something like that for this month. But if it's in that sort of test, I don't think we're going to see a lot of that stuff this year. I think we're likely going to see is they'll try to get something in by the end of the year, but it's going to end up being like an EPTU. But I wouldn't count on it. Like 2 months ago, I said, I still think that they're going to try to get NICs and crafting and engineering and scanning in before the end of the year, because CIG seems to be like really focused on the end of the year as a big sort of feature release. But I don't know now. It's just the problem is timing. It's not that CIG isn't capable of doing these things. It's just it takes them time to do them. That's been my message, the consistent message I've been trying to get for the rest of to the community, is that when you are when CIG is doing something and they're like, hey, we're working on this, we want to get it done, a lot of people go, oh, so they're done. And it's like, not really. It's still going to take them time to, to give you an example, April monthly reports, like maybe April, maybe March, but it was like earlier this year in one of the monthly reports. CIG was like, we're done with crafting, we're done with base building, we're done with we're just like, we're wrapping up things on engineering and scanning. Just because they're done or they're wrapping things up doesn't mean they're ready to go. Like they said that crafting and base building both had their were basically what they showed off at CitizenCon was done. Like it was implemented, but it didn't have UI. So it was all like, coder UI, which is terrible. Coder art is awful. And then the other stuff they've been working on for a while, but they've been sort of like dialing it in and stuff like that. Doesn't mean it's ready to go. That's just they've been working on it. And I remember someone managed to reverse engineer the control surfaces changes. This is already in the game. They just sort of pulled it out and activated the code. Yeah. And when they played it, they're like, it's bad. It's like, yeah, because it's just finished. Like it takes them, once they finish it, it takes them months of like iteration, bug fixing, and like working into the code, and then like play testing, and then going backwards and forwards with that sort of thing until they actually get something out. So the fact that we only have, it's now August, so we've got 4 months left. 4 months isn't a lot of time for CIG time in terms of to make something done, to make something good. And if we had known, we would have known already if CIG was working on those, because they wouldn't shut up about it. They would constantly talk about what they've been working on. They're super excited for it. So I don't think it's going to be ready by the end of this year. I have hope, which is always a bad thing with Star Citizen, that we'll see it in the early of next year. But I think the pivot away from features and towards getting things more fixed, which to a degree has happened, servers are a lot more stable than they used to be. There have been some issues, especially in the recent patches of crashes to desktop, but they usually fix those within a couple of hot fixes or patches. It's usually a fairly quick turnaround now to fix those issues. Elevators don't kill you as much anymore. I think I've had one elevator failure in the last 9 months, maybe 2 elevator failures. A lot of those have been smoothed out. So there's a lot of issues and things have been smoothed out. And they've added more things to the game, obviously, to various degrees of good stuff. But yeah, no, I don't think we're going to see it. I think we'll see some updates at CitizenCon, but I think that's it.
It is in engineering?
Any new features.
Okay.
Engineering, base building, anything that is new. Engineering and scanning, I think, are the most recent ones, but I don't think we may not even see an EPTU this year. I still have a inkling that they may try to do something like a preview build in August for like a week or maybe a couple of days, but I don't think we will see an EPTU. I think EPTU is one of those things that Chris said and everyone was super hyped about, and then like they just don't know how to implement it, and they might implement it by the end of the year, maybe, and then we'll see it more frequently as they go forward if it works. But
yeah, if we don't,
I think there's too much risk. They're too risk averse right now with new features. So
if we don't see an EPTU this year, I'm just not even gonna believe anything from his next letter from the chairman. It's a sad reality that we're still not testing engineering, to be honest. I think that for a lot of the people who are disappointed with this year, a lot of that disappointment comes from the fact that it doesn't feel like there's forward momentum, and I think that's largely based around features. The game itself is playing so much better than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. We're getting regular drops of PvE-focused missions, which, like, we went years without getting a single new mission back, before 3.18. It was just not happening. It was all features. It was no content, no new mission givers, no new narratives, and even the features we had weren't being put into the contracts or things that we were doing. So, like, I'm not going to say that the game hasn't been getting better, but I think that mentally and subconsciously, it doesn't feel like it's moving forward as much because information is coming much more slowly, and the features that are meant to bring the game that people are like excited for, that they talked about for 1.0, that they've talked about in CitizenCon over the last few years, are still nowhere to be seen. And that, I think, has a huge psychological effect on the community.
That is a thing for sure.
To put it lightly.
Yeah, like I think the issue is, and I've said this many times, is that I don't think CIG really understands player psychology. It shows off in their game design, shows up in their game design a lot, but I don't think they really understand how gamers think. And maybe they do. Maybe there are people at CIG who've been screaming to top of their lungs on how to fix some of these problems that CIG has in the game, but they're just being ignored. So somebody at CIG, somebody high up in CIG, is not.
You can say it, is obsessed with Squadron 42.
Well, I don't even think it's obsessed with Squadron 42. I just think they don't understand how a multiplayer mentality works, and as a result, that sort of culture has seeped into their management, and I say this is to not make fun of any individual manager or any individual person at CIG. It's just they have a management problem, and before anyone comes out and starts doing the Chris Roberts should be fired stuff, it's like, no, it's not that like the individual managers are evil and should be crucified. It's that they need to rework their thinking in terms of how they're dealing with things, or listen to the people. They need to listen to the people in their company who are telling them the stuff that the community is asking for. And in some cases, the community is wrong because, like, at the end of the day, CIG is a company, and companies are going to do everything they can to keep themselves alive, no matter what, which is ironic because CIG reflects that in the companies of the game. But so, like, there's always going to be that element of, like, we have to stay open. We have 1,000. I talked with Sandy and at Quantum Vegas. I talked with Sandy and Tyler about this on stage. And they basically said the same things. Like, we have 1,000 people we have to take care of, like healthcare, we have to pay for them. We have to make sure that they're doing okay, and like they're taking breaks and using their vacation times and doing things. Like, we're responsible for 1,000 people working on this game, and that's a lot of pressure, and we have to do things to make sure that they're okay. And the what I've talked with other CIG employees, they generally have that same vibe. It's like CIG does a lot to try to make sure it's people are okay. That pressure can make them make bad decisions, even when it comes to communication and doing things. Like, it's clear that the move towards this sort of stabilization, this playability, is less of a move that's specifically for players. It's that element of it, but it's also for the game itself. Like, they needed to make the game. They're like, we have the time to like sit down and work on this and fix this problem, and that's what they did. Even Benoit talked about that when he originally kind of brought up this idea. But that wasn't what players took, because they said playability means I can play the game now. And it's like, well, yeah, you can. There's still going to be bugs. Your stability never meant perfect game, completely fixed, you have no problems.
1.0 launching.
Yeah, 1.0 launching. But CIG also didn't know how to explain that properly, because there are a bunch of developers. So like, they have that same sort of problem where they know what they're saying and they understand. They kind of try to explain things, but they just are bad at explaining things in a way that everyone's going to understand them, or in ways that will satisfy everybody. So they just sort of give up, and that, as a result, leads to these sorts of erosion of public confidence, especially in their own company. Do I think that's the doom and gloom? It's the end. 4.2.1's Resource Rush was a crapshoot of problems and successes, so the game is dead now? No, obviously not. CIG has had so much activity in the game now because of that. If anything, the fact that people are complaining about it shows that people care more than ever. It's just like they have a bad problem of trying to deal with these sorts of setting expectations.
Yeah.
I think once they get through this year, if they do well, they have a chance, once these features are in, to kind of build the reputation up over time. But as you said, I think Squadron is also a huge factor. Also going to be a huge factor in terms of how they improve the reputation. Because if Squadron is good, comes out as good, like, people will forgive a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Look at every other video game company out there. If they make a good game, people will give them a lot of slack for anything they fuck up on. Like CD Projekt Red, BioWare, Bethesda, you name the company, and they get a lot of those companies have buggy or problematic releases all the time. But because they made Skyrim, because they made Mass Effect, because they made The Witcher, things are forgiven. Because they did good once, so this is fun, and I think that's to a degree what CIG needs. They need a good release, and then people will be like, well, but they made Squadron,
That would do.
Which is a weird thing to think about, but that's player psychology.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you so much for joining me for this talk. Before we sign off, you want to let folks know where they can find your own content, podcasts, and rants?
If you want to see me yap like this, you can find me at youtube.com/TheAstroPubLive or youtube.com/@the Captain's Table Podcast. That's the place where my podcasts or my sort of daily streams, or daily streams, but regular streams. You can also catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, where I play the game, I talk about the game, all sorts of things. And if you like the more story-based stuff that I talk about, not just about Star Citizen, I do other games as well, but focused mostly on Star Citizen, you can find me at youtube.com/TheAstroHistorian. And I'm going to make an announcement here, because Space Tomato is here. But the complete history, after almost a year of development and a lot of other problems, the complete history of Star Citizen Part 4 is finished. It is literally, I just have to listen to the audio levels to make sure that the music isn't overwhelming my voice. But the music is done. I've heard the full mix. I've seen the full video. It is done. I just have to talk with New Soul today, and it will be out for Patreons as soon as it's done. As soon as I get it, it's going up on Patreon for those of you who are Patreons, and you will get that at early access for 2 weeks, and then it will go live on Twitch on YouTube like in 2 weeks or so. But members will get a couple of days early access there as well. So,
and I will watch it 10 separate times. Guys, go support this man. Keep this freaking video series going because it's a lot of work, and he needs it. It's gotta keep going. We gotta see it through until the history of Star Citizen ends. All right, man.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for checking out this episode. Good long talk. I hope you got to learn more about 4.3. I will have my own coverage of this update coming out over the course of the next week. And of course, I think more things will be coming to light over that same time as we see more and more improvements. We didn't talk about everything that's in the update. There's some other stuff, but
there's a lot of stuff. There's armor. There's lots
new
of
sniper, cool ladder improvements. There are some things, but we hit on the main big topics I wanted to really hit on, and I hope you guys got to learn something from it, get some entertainment, get some information. Thank you again, everybody, for watching the Launch Sequence Podcast. I'll see you all next week.